The morning started like any other morning on Kepler 442b. Kim Hwan woke up at 6 in the morning and made coffee for his wife Park Soo. She was already awake reading medical reports on her tablet. Their daughter Kim Nari was still sleeping in her room. She worked late last night fixing the water pumps in Sector 3. Colony 7 was a good place to live. The air was clean and the soil was rich. 2,000 Korean families had built homes here over the past 10 years. They grew vegetables in huge greenhouses. Children played in the parks between the living domes. Old people sat on benches and watched the two suns set every evening. Hwan was the security captain, but his job was easy. The biggest problems were usually broken equipment or arguments between neighbors. His team had 20 men with basic weapons. They never expected to fight anyone. Space pirates were just stories from the news feeds. That day, everything changed forever. The alien ships came without warning. They dropped out of hyperspace like giant black knives cutting through the orange sky. Hwan was drinking his second cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the security center and saw the ships on the sensors. 5 massive vessels bigger than anything humans had ever built. The aliens did not send any messages. They did not ask for surrender. They just started shooting. The first plasma beam hit the community center where children were having breakfast. The building turned into melted metal and ash in 1 second. Hwan watched the screen in horror as more beams rained down on the colony. The school exploded. The main power plant vanished in a ball of fire. People were running everywhere, mothers carrying babies, men trying to reach their families. The alien soldiers were already landing in small ships. They wore black armor and carried weapons that killed anything they pointed at. Hwan grabbed his rifle and ran outside. His security team was shooting at the aliens, but their bullets bounced off the armor like pebbles. The aliens moved through the streets, killing everyone they saw. Men, women, children, old people. Nobody was spared. He saw Park Soo through the medical center windows. She was helping injured people get to the underground shelter. An alien soldier walked into the building. Hwan heard the plasma weapon fire 3 times. When he looked again, his wife was gone. Nari was running toward the communication tower. She wanted to send a distress signal to Earth. An alien saw her and raised his weapon. Hwan screamed and ran toward his daughter. The plasma beam hit her in the back. She fell face down in the dirt 20 meters from the tower. Everything went white with rage. Hwan emptied his rifle at the alien who killed his daughter. The bullets did nothing. The alien turned toward him and fired. The beam hit the building above Hwan, and tons of concrete fell down. He was buried under the rubble. Hours passed in darkness and pain. Hwan could hear explosions getting farther away. When he finally dug himself out, the colony was dead. Every building was destroyed. Bodies lay everywhere. The aliens had taken everything useful and left, but they made one big mistake. The quantum communication relay was still working. It was buried deep underground, and the aliens missed it. Hwan crawled to the tower with broken ribs and a bleeding head. He activated the system and sent a message to Earth. His voice was shaking as he spoke into the microphone. Kim Hwan, security captain of Colony 7. They came without warning. Alien. Ships with plasma weapons. They killed everyone. My wife is dead. My daughter is dead. 2,000 people are dead. They called us vermin. They laughed while they murdered children. The message included security camera recordings of the attack. The aliens could be seen clearly. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and black eyes. They wore armor with strange symbols. Their language sounded like metal scraping against stone. Most important of all, Hwan had recorded their communications. The aliens were talking to each other during the massacre. The translation computers on Earth would figure out what they said, how they called humans pests that needed to be removed, how they joked about pest control while burning down homes. The message traveled 47 light years in an instant, through quantum space. It reached Earth in perfect clarity. Every word, every image, every sound of the massacre, the alien laughter, the screams of children, the cold, efficient way they had murdered an entire colony. Earth received the message. At 8 in the morning Greenwich time. Within 1 hour, every news channel on the planet was broadcasting the footage. Within 2 hours, emergency sessions were called in every government. Within 4 hours, production facilities were switching to military equipment. The reaction was immediate and total. Democrats and Republicans agreed for the first time in decades. Russians and Americans shook hands. Chinese and Japanese leaders made joint statements. Every nation, every political party, every human faction suddenly had one thing in common. Someone had murdered human families, and they were going to pay for it. The Vulcan Empire had ruled 17 star systems for 3,000 years. They had enslaved dozens of species. They had never lost a war. Their military doctrine was simple: find weak species and crush them quickly, take their resources and move on to the next target. They thought humans would be just another easy conquest. A primitive species with basic technology and no real weapons, the attack on Colony 7 was supposed to be a quick test. Kill some humans and see how Earth reacted. If the response was weak, they would take more colonies. If Earth fought back, they would destroy the entire planet. The Vulcans had never fought humans before. They did not know that humans were different from other species. They did not know that humans had spent thousands of years fighting wars against each other. They did not know that humans turned warfare into an art form. Most importantly, they did not know that humans never forgot when someone killed their children. Kim Hwan died 3 days later from his injuries, but his message changed everything. The last transmission from Colony 7 became the battle cry for the entire human species. 2,000 names were engraved on a memorial wall in Geneva. Every soldier who signed up for the war saw those names first. The Vulcans wanted to test human resolve. They got their answer faster than they expected. Earth was coming for them, and Earth was bringing everything it had. General Lee Dong-soo stood in the main briefing room of United Earth Command, watching the Colony 7 footage for the 100th time. Every time he saw the alien soldiers laughing while they killed children, his anger grew stronger. Behind him sat representatives from every nation on Earth. For once, nobody was arguing about politics or territory. The footage showed everything clearly. Alien ships dropping from hyperspace, plasma weapons turning buildings to ash, soldiers in black armor, hunting down families. Most disturbing of all were the recorded alien communications. The translation computers had worked all night to decode their language. The aliens called humans vermin. They joked about pest control while murdering children. They talked about taking human colony worlds and selling them to other species. Earth was just another primitive planet to be conquered and exploited. Lee Dong-soo had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in small wars and peacekeeping missions. But he had never seen anything like this. The aliens had attacked without warning or demands. They had killed everyone in the colony, including babies and grandparents. This was not war. This was extermination. The general pressed a button and the footage stopped. He looked at the faces around the table, presidents and prime ministers and military commanders from every continent. All of them had the same expression: cold, deadly anger. "We are no longer a peaceful species," he said quietly. "The Vulcans have reminded us what we truly are. We are humans, and humans protect their families. When someone kills our families, we kill them back." The mobilization began immediately. Every factory on Earth stopped making consumer goods and started making weapons. Car companies built tanks. Electronics manufacturers made guidance systems for missiles. Smartphone factories produced communication equipment for soldiers. Dr. Yang Mina had spent her career studying quantum physics for peaceful purposes. Now she worked 20 hours a day, designing faster than light weapons. If aliens could travel between stars to murder humans, then humans would travel between stars to return the favor. Young engineer Park Ji-hoon led a team that designed new spaceships. Not exploration vessels or cargo haulers, but pure military ships built for one purpose: getting human soldiers to alien worlds as fast as possible so they could start killing aliens. The recruitment centers were overwhelmed. Men and women lined up for blocks to join the military. Farmers wanted to become soldiers. Teachers wanted to learn tactics. Artists wanted to design better weapons. Everyone wanted revenge for Colony 7. Commander Choi Hana took charge of the training programs. She had been a Special Forces officer before the war. Now she trained ordinary citizens to fight alien soldiers. Her methods were harsh but effective. Soft civilians became hard warriors in 12 weeks. The asteroid mining operations became weapon factories. Engineers figured out how to turn mining lasers into ship-mounted cannons. The Mars colonies became training bases where soldiers learned to fight in hostile environments. Even the research stations around Jupiter started producing military equipment. But Earth's greatest advantage was not technology or resources, it was memory. Humans remembered every war they had ever fought, every tactic that worked, every strategy that failed, every lesson learned in blood over thousands of years. The Vulcans had superior technology and bigger ships. They controlled 17 star systems and had never lost a war, but they had never fought a species that made warfare into an art form. They used violence as a tool. Humans used it as a calling. Intelligence reports came from deep space monitoring stations. The Vulcan Empire was huge and powerful. Their battlecruisers could destroy planets. Their armies had conquered dozens of alien species. They had been fighting wars for 3,000 years, but they had never fought humans. The first phase of Earth response would be reconnaissance. Fast ships with advanced sensors would map Vulcan positions and defenses. Lieutenant Yoon Tae-ho would lead these scout missions. He was young but smart and very brave. The second phase would be disruption. Dr. Kang Yoo-jin had developed computer viruses designed specifically for Vulcan systems. Human cyber warfare would attack their communications and navigation, make them blind and confused. The third phase would be the hammer blow, the full might of human military power unleashed on the Vulcan Empire. Not just to win the war, but to make sure no other alien species would ever think about attacking human families again. The war production ramped up faster than anyone thought possible. Weapons that existed only in theory 6 months ago were being mass-produced. Ships that broke the laws of physics were rolling off assembly lines. Soldiers were training with equipment that would have been science fiction before the massacre. Every human settlement in the solar system contributed something to the war effort. The moon bases provided raw materials. The orbital stations built ship components. Even the deep space colonies sent volunteers and supplies. The message was spreading through human space. Colony 7 had been avenged would be the rallying cry. 2,000 murdered civilians would not be forgotten. The Vulcans had wanted to test human resolve. They were about to get a very complete answer. General Lee Dong-soo looked out the window of his office at the night sky. Somewhere out there, alien soldiers were probably laughing about their easy victory. They thought humans were weak and primitive. They thought Earth would surrender or hide behind its defenses. They were about to learn that humans were different from every other species they had encountered. Humans did not just fight to win, they fought to make examples. And the example they were going to make of the Vulcan Empire would be remembered for 1,000 years. The war was coming and Earth was ready. The Vulcan patrol fleet detected the human ships at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, and Admiral Thexvar was not impressed. The primitive vessels were smaller than Vulcan fighter craft and appeared to be unarmed. This first contact with the species from Colony 7 would be laughably easy. Thexvar had been expecting this moment for months. Intelligence reports suggested that humans might attempt some kind of retaliation for the pest control operation. The Admiral found this amusing. No species had ever successfully attacked the Vulcan Empire. These humans would learn the same lesson as all the others. Capture those vessels intact, he ordered his subordinates. We need to study their primitive technology. Perhaps we can learn something useful about their homeworld defenses. The data will Help us plan the complete extermination of their species. Captain Song Min-ho watched the Velkin tractor beams lock onto his ship and smiled grimly. His crew of 12 volunteers knew this would probably be a one-way mission, but they were not here to survive. They were here to gather intelligence that would help Earth win the war. The Velkin cruiser was massive compared to human ships. It bristled with weapons that could vaporize small moons. The armor was thick enough to stop nuclear weapons. The shields could deflect any energy beam humans could produce. It looked completely invulnerable, but looks could deceive. As the Velkins pulled the human ship into their docking bay, hidden recording devices activated throughout Song ship. Microscopic sensors scattered into the alien vessel's ventilation system. Quantum transmitters began mapping every corridor and weapon system and computer network. The aliens thought they were capturing primitive enemies. Actually, they were giving humans a complete blueprint of their most advanced military technology. The interrogation began immediately. Song and his crew were dragged to holding cells deep inside the alien ship. The Velkins had 3,000 years of experience breaking captured enemies. Their methods combined physical torture with psychological pressure and chemical truth serums. But they had never interrogated humans before. The aliens started with pain, electric shocks that would make most species beg for mercy. Song and his crew gritted their teeth and said nothing. The Velkins increased the voltage. The humans passed out from agony but revealed no useful information. Next came fear. The aliens showed holographic images of what they had done to other conquered species. Entire worlds turned to ash. Billions of beings killed or enslaved. Most prisoners broke down and pleaded for their lives at this point. The humans looked at the images with cold hatred and stayed silent. Chemical interrogation was the Velkins' most reliable method. Neural probes that read thoughts directly from the brain. Truth serums that made lies impossible. Mind control devices that turned enemies into slaves. Nothing worked on human brain chemistry. The drugs had no effect. The neural probes found only random static. The mind control devices seemed to make the humans angry rather than compliant. Admiral Thexvar visited the prisoners personally after 2 days of failed interrogation. He stared at Song through the energy barrier of the holding cell. The human was covered in burn marks and injection sites, but his eyes still blazed with defiance. "Your species is primitive," the Admiral said in translated human language. "Your ships are weak, and your weapons are pathetic. Why do you resist when defeat is inevitable? Tell us the location of your homeworld, and we will make your deaths quick." Song looked up at the giant insect-like alien and managed to smile through his pain. "You made one big mistake, Bugface. You killed our children. Now you get to find out what humans do to child killers. My people are coming for you, and they are bringing hell with them." The rescue mission began 36 hours later. Commander Choi Hana materialized in the corridor outside the holding cells, using experimental teleportation technology. Her strike team appeared throughout the Velkin ship in perfect coordination. The aliens had never faced enemies who could appear behind them without warning. The Velkins had superior weapons and armor. Their ship was bigger and better armed than anything humans could build. But they had never fought a species that treated impossible tactical situations as interesting puzzles to solve. Hana team used the alien ship's own systems against it. They turned off gravity in key sections, sending Velkin soldiers floating helplessly. They overloaded power conduits to create explosions in weapon storage areas. They reprogrammed the ship's computer to play human music at maximum volume throughout all decks. The aliens discovered that humans had spent thousands of years developing asymmetric warfare. Every disadvantage became an advantage. Smaller size meant access to maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts. Lower technology meant immunity to electronic jamming. Apparent weakness hid incredible ferocity when properly motivated. 20 minutes. After the rescue began, Song and his crew were free and fighting alongside Hana strike team. The battle moved through the alien ship like a deadly game of hide and seek. Humans appeared where Vulcans least expected them. Explosions created chaos and confusion. Computer viruses turned the ship's own defenses against its crew, but the real victory was not tactical. While the rescue operation distracted the aliens, Song-hidden sensors had finished mapping every system on the ship. Quantum transmitters had stolen the complete database of Vulcan military technology. Most importantly, they had recorded detailed conversations between alien officers. The Vulcans still thought humans were primitive and weak. They were planning a massive invasion of Earth using 1,000 battlecruisers. They expected complete victory within days of arriving at the human homeworld. They had no idea that every second of delay gave Earth more time to prepare devastating surprises. The extraction went perfectly. Hana team and the rescued prisoners teleported back to their ships and disappeared into hyperspace before Vulcan. Reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Thexvar was left with a crippled cruiser and the disturbing realization that humans were much more dangerous than anyone had predicted. The intelligence gathered during the mission changed everything. Earth now knew exactly what the Vulcans were planning. Human engineers studied the captured technology and found ways to turn it against its creators. Most importantly, the military strategists now understood how the aliens thought about warfare. The Vulcans expected overwhelming force to guarantee victory. They had never faced an enemy that made force irrelevant through superior tactics. They were about to receive a very educational experience in human military creativity. 6 months after the rescue mission, the second major battle of the war began at the Vega system. Fleet Admiral Rex Hahn commanded 200 Vulcan warships assembled for the final assault on Earth. Intelligence reports showed humans were sending 50 vessels to oppose them. The numbers seemed like a cruel joke. Rex Hahn had fought in dozens of campaigns over his long military career. He had never lost a battle and did not expect to start losing now. The human ships approaching his position were laughably small compared to Vulcan battlecruisers. Their weapons appeared primitive and their armor looked thin. Computer projections showed complete human destruction within 2 hours. Rex Hahn expected to be drinking victory wine before the alien suns had finished setting. Then his fleet would proceed to Earth and end this minor rebellion against Vulcan expansion. Colonel Park Jin-woo commanded the human response from the bridge of EFS Retribution. His fleet looked pathetic next to the massive alien armada. Every ship was outnumbered 4-1. The Vulcan vessels had more firepower and better defenses than anything Earth could produce, but appearances were very deceiving. The battle began according to Vulcan expectations. Rex Hahn ordered his ships to advance in a perfect formation that had crushed enemies for centuries. Plasma cannons charged to full power. Missile launchers loaded their deadliest warheads, targeting computers locked onto the approaching human vessels. "Fire at will," the Admiral commanded. The Vulcan broadside should have vaporized the entire human fleet instantly. Thousands of energy beams and guided missiles streaked across space toward their targets. Rex Hahn watched the tactical display and waited for the satisfying explosions that would mark another easy victory. Instead, the attacks passed through empty space. The human ships flickered in and out of reality using experimental dimensional technology. They appeared solid on sensors, but plasma beams passed right through them. Missiles lost their targets and detonated harmlessly against nothing. The entire Vulcan first strike accomplished exactly 0 damage. "What manner of sorcery is this, Rex Hahn?" demanded as his formation began to break apart. Human vessels were appearing inside his defensive perimeter, attacking from impossible angles. They struck fast and hard, then vanished before his ships could return fire. The humans had stopped trying to match Vulcan technology and instead focused on making Vulcan advantages completely irrelevant. Superior shields could not stop attacks that bypassed physical reality. Advanced targeting systems were useless against enemies that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Park Jin-woo watched his battle plan unfold perfectly. Earth had learned from every encounter with Vulcan forces. Human engineers had studied captured alien technology and found its weaknesses. Every Vulcan strength had been turned into a vulnerability through creative application of physics. The real breakthrough came from engineer Kim So-young and her experimental gravity weapons. Her devices created localized black holes that crushed enemy ships from within. The aliens had never encountered weaponized physics on this scale. Their armor and shields offered no protection against fundamental forces gone hostile. Vulcan battle. Cruiser after battle cruiser simply collapsed into impossibly dense points of matter. Rex-Han watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed by weapons that violated everything he understood about warfare. How could primitive humans command forces that advanced aliens could not defend against? The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans had approached the problem of fighting superior enemies by changing the rules of engagement entirely. They had weaponized space and time and gravity itself. They fought with the fundamental building blocks of reality as their ammunition. In 3 hours, Park Jin-woo fleet had destroyed or captured 90% of the Vulcan armada. The few surviving ships fled in panic, carrying tales of impossible human capabilities to their home worlds. But the real victory was psychological rather than tactical. For the first time in 3,000 years, Vulcan military forces had been decisively defeated. The empire that had never known fear suddenly discovered terror. Word spread through alien space faster than their fastest ships could travel. The primitive humans possessed technology that seemed like magic. They fought with tactics that ignored conventional military wisdom. Most disturbing of all, they appeared to enjoy combat in ways that troubled even veteran Vulcan warriors. Several captured alien officers requested immediate execution rather than face human interrogation techniques they had heard described by survivors of previous encounters. The rumors grew worse with each retelling. Humans who could walk through walls, weapons that killed enemies in the past before battles even started, soldiers who laughed while fighting impossible odds. Rex-Han himself was captured when his flagship. Life support systems were infiltrated by nanobots that converted the air into a mild sedative. He woke up in a human prison cell facing questions from intelligence specialists who seemed to know more about Vulcan military doctrine than he did. The interrogation was almost gentle compared to Vulcan methods. The humans offered comfortable chairs and hot meals and polite conversation, but somehow they extracted every piece of useful information from his mind without using force or chemicals or neural probes. Later, Rex-Han would realize that humans had turned interrogation into a psychological art form. They made prisoners want to cooperate rather than forcing them to reveal secrets. It was more effective than torture and left enemies doubting their own loyalty to the cause. The victory at Vega changed the entire strategic situation. Vulcan High Command realized that humans were not the primitive species they had appeared to be. Earth possessed military capabilities that defied analysis. Worse, the humans seemed to be improving their technology at an impossible rate. Every battle taught them new lessons. Every encounter with Vulcan forces gave them more data to work with. They were learning faster than their enemies could adapt. The war that was supposed to end in Vulcan victory within months was turning into a nightmare that threatened the existence of their entire empire. Dr. Lim Hai-jin had spent 15 years studying theoretical alien biology before the war started. After Colony 7, her research took a much darker direction. If humans were going to fight aliens, then humans needed to understand exactly how to kill aliens most effectively. Her laboratory deep beneath the Swiss mountains had become something that would give nightmares to anyone who saw it. Captured Vulcan specimens were kept alive for months while Hai-jin teams studied every aspect of their biology. They mapped alien nervous systems. They tested different toxins and diseases. They found every possible weakness. The biological weapons she developed were works of terrible art. Vulcans breathed through specialized gill slits that filtered nitrogen and methane from their atmosphere. Hyogen-engineered bacteria that converted those breathing organs into acid-producing factories. The process took exactly 6 minutes and was reportedly extremely painful. More importantly, it was completely untreatable using Vulcan medical technology. Their doctors had no experience with diseases designed specifically to exploit their species' unique biological features. Once infected, alien soldiers died slowly and horribly while their own body chemistry turned against them. Captain Oh Sung-min deployed these weapons during the siege of the Altair system. His stealth ship slipped past Vulcan orbital defenses and released bacterial clouds into space station ventilation systems. Within hours, entire garrison forces were dying in agony, clawing at their own throats as their breathing organs dissolved. The psychological impact was devastating. Vulcan forces began evacuating star systems at the first sign of human ships in nearby sectors. Entire fleets would retreat rather than risk exposure to biological weapons that turned their own bodies into instruments of torture. But biology was only one front in humanity, expanding arsenal of creative destruction. Dr. Nam Junseo led a team that developed quantum viruses specifically designed to corrupt alien computer systems at the subatomic level. Once infected, enemy networks began making random errors that cascaded into total system failures. Vulcan weapons would fire at their own ships instead of human targets. Navigation computers plotted courses directly into the nearest star. Communication networks broadcast human propaganda instead of military orders. Most disturbing of all, the viruses seemed to learn and adapt faster than alien programmers could. Develop countermeasures. The 3,000-year technological advantage that Vulcans had enjoyed over other species crumbled as humans proved that innovation mattered more than inherited knowledge. Lieutenant Colonel Shin Ye-won combat engineers built weapons from battlefield salvage, turning captured alien equipment against its creators with modifications that violated several laws of physics. Every destroyed Vulcan ship became raw material for new horrors. Plasma cannons were rewired to fire in all directions simultaneously. Shield generators were converted into localized reality distortion fields. Even simple communication devices were turned into psychological warfare tools that drove enemy crews, insane with perfectly crafted sounds and images. Meanwhile, humanity information warfare reached levels of creativity that impressed even their own specialists. Kim Tae-young led psychological operations that convinced entire Vulcan fleets they were fighting demons or mathematical impossibilities given murderous form rather than human soldiers. Enemy forces began surrendering without firing a shot, too. Avoid combat against what their own propaganda described as impossible warriors who could not be killed by conventional weapons. The rumors were carefully crafted by human intelligence services, but they contained just enough truth to be believable. Humans did seem to appear and disappear at will. Their weapons did ignore known laws of physics. Their soldiers did laugh while fighting impossible odds against superior numbers. The Vulcans had created their own worst fears by attacking a species that turned warfare into performance art. The turning point in human technological development came when Earth military researchers stopped trying to match alien capabilities and focused instead on making those capabilities completely irrelevant. Vulcan advantages in shields and armor and firepower meant nothing when human forces attacked from dimensions that aliens did not know existed. Engineer Park Hyun-woo developed weapons that fired backwards through time, hitting targets several seconds before the trigger was pulled. The causality violations gave Vulcan computer systems nervous breakdowns as they tried to process battles where effects preceded causes and explosions happened before anyone fired a shot. But perhaps the most terrifying human innovation was their approach to logistics and supply chains. Traditional military forces needed constant resupply of ammunition and fuel and spare parts. Human forces had learned to live off the battlefield itself, converting destroyed alien equipment into whatever they needed. A crashed Vulcan fighter became components for 50 different human weapons. A damaged alien computer provided processing. power for virus warfare against enemy networks. Even destroyed alien bodies were processed into biological weapons that could be deployed against living enemies. The war had taught humans to waste nothing and use everything. They fought like a species that had spent thousands of years surviving in hostile environments by turning every disadvantage into an opportunity. The Velkans were learning that fighting humans was like fighting the universe itself. Every time alien forces thought they understood human capabilities, Earth would demonstrate something completely new and impossible. Soldiers who could exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Weapons that fired concepts rather than physical projectiles. Ships that moved by convincing space itself to relocate around them. The Velkan Empire that had ruled 17 star systems, for 3 millennia was being systematically dismantled by a species that had not even achieved faster than light travel 2 years ago. The worst part was that humans seemed to be accelerating their technological development with every battle they fought. They were not just winning the war, they were evolving into something that no alien species had ever encountered before. A civilization that treated the impossible as an engineering challenge and the laws of reality as suggestions that could be ignored when convenient. The final assault on the Velkan homeworld began exactly 2 years after the massacre at Colony 7. Admiral Lee Soo-jin commanded a human fleet that looked like a museum of technologies that should not have existed. Ships moved through space by folding reality around themselves. Weapons fired pure mathematics that deleted targets from existence. Soldiers wore armor that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The Velkan capital system had never been successfully attacked in 3,000 years of continuous warfare. Their defenses could stop anything the known universe might throw at them. Orbital stations bristled with weapons capable of destroying small moons. Shield generators created barriers that had never been breached. Computer networks controlled. Automated systems that could fight entire wars without organic crews. But all of these defenses had been designed to face conventional physics and traditional military strategies. They offered no protection whatsoever against enemies who treated the laws of reality as polite suggestions that could be ignored when inconvenient. Dr. Park Hyun-woo, crowning achievement, was deployed in the first wave of the human attack. His causality bombs destroyed targets retroactively by convincing the universe that those targets had never existed in the first place. Velkan defensive computers registered readings that violated their understanding of how time and space operated. Heavily fortified orbital platforms simply vanished from existence, leaving behind empty spaces that had apparently been vacant for centuries. When Velkan engineers checked their construction records, they found detailed plans for building defenses around empty areas of space that served no obvious purpose. The aliens' most advanced sensors confirmed that these installations had somehow been destroyed in the past before human ships had even arrived in their star system. The attacks had occurred yesterday, but the human fleet was still 3 hours away from weapons range. Even Velkan mathematics could not explain what they were witnessing. But the war-true conclusion was not going to be won through superior technology alone. As human forces surrounded the Velkan homeworld, Captain John Min-kyung broadcast a message that reached every alien communication network in known space. The translation was simple and absolutely clear in its implications. "You murdered our families at Colony 7, she said in a voice that carried across 17 star systems simultaneously. "Now you face complete extinction as a species. Any other aliens who are listening to this message should consider what happened here very carefully. This is what humans do to child killers." The Velkans attempted to negotiate from their increasingly desperate position. They offered territory and resources and the freedom of every species they had enslaved over the millennia. They promised to withdraw from human space and never return. They begged for mercy and forgiveness and any terms that might convince Earth to show restraint. Their pleas fell on completely deaf ears. Mercy was a concept for species that had not committed genocide against human children. The Velkans had chosen total war when they sterilized Colony 7 without warning or provocation. Now they would experience humanity interpretation of total victory. The end came not from orbital bombardment or ground invasion, but from something far more creative and infinitely more cruel. Humanity's final gift to their enemies was a modified version of their own dimensional travel technology, one that relocated the entire Velkan species to a custom-built pocket universe. They would survive, but in a space barely large enough for their homeworld, with resources that would support them indefinitely at subsistence level. No faster than light travel, no advanced technology, no contact with the outside universe. Just endless time to think about what they had done to innocent human families. The pocket universe was designed with special features that ensured the Velkans would never forget their crimes. Holographic displays showed the Colony 7 massacre on continuous loop in their sky. The voices of dying human children played softly in the background of their daily lives. Every sunrise reminded them of the consequences of attacking human families. As news of humanity's complete victory spread throughout the galaxy, alien civilizations began reconsidering their expansion plans and military policies. The species that had appeared primitive and harmless had just eliminated a 3,000-year-old empire in less than 2 years of active warfare. More disturbing, they had done it while apparently enjoying themselves. Human soldiers had been recorded laughing during battles. Human engineers seemed to take artistic pride in designing impossible weapons. Human leaders spoke about the war as if it had been an interesting scientific experiment rather than a life or death struggle. Earth's message to the galaxy was perfectly clear through demonstration rather than words. Humans were no longer seeking peaceful coexistence with their alien neighbors. They were seeking neighbors who understood that certain lines should never ever be crossed under any circumstances. The murder of human families was the brightest and most absolute of those lines. Crossing it meant facing a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of creative violence and turning warfare into a form of artistic expression that would be remembered for millennia. Colony 7 was avenged, but more importantly, it would never be forgotten. Somewhere in Earth, expanding military archives, the names and faces of 2,000 murdered civilians served as a permanent reminder of what happened when aliens mistook human civilization for human nature. The war was over, and humanity had won more completely than anyone thought possible. The galaxy would never make the mistake of underestimating them again. More importantly, no alien species would ever again consider attacking human families without remembering what happened to the last aliens who tried it. Human children could sleep safely, knowing that their parents had made the universe a place where murdering human families was the most dangerous thing any species could possibly do. The price of that safety had been paid in full by the Velkan Empire, and somewhere in their pocket universe prison, the last members of that empire would spend eternity remembering exactly why that price had been necessary.